Good afternoon, everyone. This is Mike Romali here with the off-season hurricane outlook and discussion for December 10th, 2020, recorded around 2 p.m. Eastern Time. Taking a wide look across the continental United States today, you'll notice that generally all is fairly quiet except for up here across the north. We have a lot of cloud cover. This is a developing area of low pressure off the coastline here. This will be scooting well towards the north and east, so not really affecting any land at all. But behind it, there's a ridge in this area. You can kind of see this general cyclonic or, rather anticyclonic flow. And this is a ridge over the central United States. You've got kind of this, a ridge, a trough, and then this area of low pressure out here. So this is kind of digging in some cloud cover across the northeast today. So it's kind of going to be a high overcast type deal there. And then out across the central United States, mainly back over the southwestern part of the United States, we have a developing area of low pressure and associated cold front. And this is going to be moving in the general direction towards the north and east over the next several days, which could provide for some snow across parts of Wisconsin and Michigan over the next several days or so. Now, there is some trickiness to this setup, and partially because ahead of this, we're going to have an open warm front. This open warm sector, again, drawing in a lot of moisture coming off of the Gulf of Mexico, but also the warmth that is still down here. Temperatures down in this region are still warm enough that it would preclude a massive snow event digging in really out across this region. So, what you're going to be dealing with is warm air advection all the way northward, which could hinder a lot of the snow, especially right along that warm front. Now, north of there, we'll talk about how that's going to play out right now. So you can see today we have somewhat of like an Alberta clipper right here. Again, this is a very shallow area and very small relatively. And this is kind of, moving in the general direction of the east. Now, here's what we're talking about for the setup. This is out here by 30 hours from now. This is by tomorrow afternoon, by Friday, December 11th. So tomorrow by 1 p.m. This rapidly developing area of low pressure, it's relatively weak right now, about 1,007 millibars, but this will be moving off towards kind of the northeast like that and kind of going on a trajectory somewhat like this. Now, behind it, we have cold air that's being pulled back behind it, and in front of it, we have a warm sector. And we can actually see here that if we look here at the 2 meter temperatures, what you'll notice is that there's a very prevalent warm front that extends out in this region right here. This is kind of the warm front off towards that region. So just kind of marking the fronts real quick, we can kind of see that we have this fairly distinct kind of transition in this area. And again, everywhere to the south of the warm front is going to have temperatures in the upper 50s. So you can actually see here that temperatures could exceed, about 55 to maybe even 60 degrees out here, especially like in southern Illinois. And north of this front, you have temperatures that are in the 40s and 30s out across here, and, even some lower 30s out across portions of Montana and Minnesota at the moment. So right now, the setup is fairly synoptically favorable that this warm front is going to continue lifting northward through the day and preclude a lot of snowfall across most of northern Indiana at this time. And again, if we go back here, this is now looking, we'll go 36, 42 hours. Again, this area is still in the warm sector. You notice there's not a lot of snow behind here. Now, the pressures are deepening. We got about 1,003 millibar low right now approaching St. Louis, Missouri, and the Missouri-Illinois border. Now, again, everywhere out here is in the open warm sector. The further north you go, there is the chance you could see some snow, especially in the higher elevations up there in Michigan, and potentially on the backside of this low pressure here out across Wisconsin. So everywhere back here does have a shot at seeing snow. And again, just real quickly, switching back to the temperatures, you'll definitely notice where the front is positioned right about in here. This is kind of the frontal boundary. And then you have your warm front that's kind of coming up something like that. So your warm front is draped across here at the moment. Now, again, this is somewhat of a tricky setup because this area of low pressure is kind of sitting right about here, and it's kind of skirting more so towards the north and east like that. So this warm front is going to sag northward through the day. It's going to be pushed a little bit more northward, but then behind it, you'll notice that we have very cold air behind it, and this will be trying to get wrapped around into the backside of the circulation. Because this is a cyclonic circulation, this cold air is going to be pulled back in, and behind it, now we could start to talk about maybe some freezing rain on the transition line and potentially even some snow. And what you'll start to see here is that on the GFS forecast, this is 54 hours from now, by Saturday, 1 p.m. Saturday, you'll notice that now we actually do have a band of heavier snow towards the north and a mainly rain event all across the south. And again, the fronts at this moment in time, if we actually look at the position, we can actually see that again, we have temperatures that are in the 50s mostly across here. You can kind of see where this line might extend. And then we have the warm front that's kind of positioned right something like that. Now, you're not going to get a lot of snow south of this front. It's just not going to happen. But where you can see that temperatures are in the lower 40s, upper 30s, especially at across here, there's definitely some feasibility for some snow to fall across this area. So if I were to look for a greater chance of snowfall right now based on the GFS forecast, I would definitely be putting that risk for heavier snow really across northern Illinois into, well, really starting from far eastern Iowa, northern Illinois, really southern, um, really into southern Wisconsin and northwestern Michigan could see the better chance of some heavier snow out of this. And now, if we take a look here, that is a little too close. If we take a look here at the NAM 3 kilometer, we'll just run this back here. So this is the 3 kilometer NAM, and this is going to be valid for 0Z Saturday. We'll jump this even further back. So this is 18Z tomorrow, 1 p.m. And again, you've got the area of low pressure sitting out across here. Now notice that there's some snowfall in the back, the cold air down here. Now it's not really a lot of snow. This isn't going to be a very heavy snowfall event, but definitely maybe 1 to 2, maybe 3 inches could certainly fall. But it's more important, again, looking at where our frontal boundaries are. And again, you can very clearly see a well-defined cold front in this region and an ascending warm front that's definitely arriving, something like that. So it's a little bit different here. And again, that's our area of low pressure right there. So it's a little bit different here. And again, it's skirting generally towards the north and east at the moment. So this warm front is going to lift northward. And on the back side of this, of course, you're going to have the colder air and the potential for some snowfall. Now, as this low begins to deepen, it undergoes more extensive cyclogenesis. You can actually see that there becomes a heavier pocket of snow that starts to develop, and we actually get snow arriving with a band located really all the way from even northeast of Wisconsin, all the way back down in here, all the way into Kansas. So kind of right along this very narrow band, and especially more heavy snowfall out across here into parts of southeastern Nebraska and northeastern Kansas. Now, the frontal positions at this time, again, you very clearly see the orientation of this cold front out across here. Now, notice that the NAM is a little bit different here in the fact that, yes, we still have this warm front, but this warm front is sort of like this at the moment. And you can see that this warm front will still tend to lift northward throughout the day. So it's going to tend to pull more northward. But you notice what you've got on the back side of this is that you've got more extensive cold air working in. And this is going to allow for the potential for a more significant snowfall event on the back side of this. And that's what we're seeing on this particular model, is that we're seeing this heavy snow, especially back into southeastern Nebraska and Kansas and then into Iowa, you could definitely see a pocket of heavier snow develop on the backside of this because there's going to be sufficient forcing in that environment behind the area of low pressure itself as it begins to occlude. And we can actually see then, really by Saturday, 1 p.m., again, this warm front has lifted further northward. But you notice on the back side here into northeastern Illinois or northwestern Illinois, we have all that snow coming back on the back side. And in the warm front, you can really see where that transition zone is. And so the actual frontal positions at this time going to be something like this. We have that cold front now approaching Indiana, and the warm front is now surging northward out ahead of that. It's kind of surging northward into southern Michigan at this time. Now, the area of low pressure is still sitting roughly right about here, that warm front right about there. And again, it's going to continue moving northward, but you can really see where that axis could be for some heavier snowfall. And if we actually go back and we pick up on the HRR, the HRRR for the 12Z run, because this is the furthest available time, we'll go to the 12Z HRRR model. And again, you'll notice that Alberta Clipper today. And then eventually, here comes our area of low pressure. Now, you can see that we have a surging warm front ahead of it. All of this is going to be mainly cold rain. We've got our trailing front, obviously, and then on the back side here is that snow again. So this pattern seems to be fairly consistent within all the models. Now, at this time, we can see that we have our front. Now, the HRRR is going for a slightly little bit more of a different situation. Can kind of see that front right there. Now, the warm front does extend pretty far to the north already. You can actually argue that this warm front could extend all the way into southern Wisconsin at this time. So either way, our warm front's there, our low pressure is here, and you can see that it's not as aggressive with this cold air on the NAM for the time being. But if we start to move forward in time, we can start to see that now we start to pick up. This is by Saturday at around, or this is really Friday at 10 p.m. We'll move into Wednesday at about 3 a.m. in the or Saturday 3 a.m. in the morning. And notice here is that transition between maybe even some sleet and snow, and some snow the further north you get into portions of Wisconsin and Michigan. Now, at the same time, here's our area of low pressure. And if we actually look here at the frontal positions, again, we've got the cold front extending down something similar to this. And we've got the warm front extending northward, kind of right along this axis here. So it's a little bit different because this warm front is not as far north, especially into parts of Iowa or into portions of Illinois. It doesn't extend that far north. Now, this warm front will trail northward further into Michigan, over the next few hours here on the model. But notice this cold air beginning to really sag in across this region. And because there's sufficient forcing close enough to that low, I would not rule out maybe the potential for a more substantial winter weather event shaping up for maybe portions even of Chicago and southeastern Wisconsin. That is for sure. And if we continue to move this forward, you can see this really does take shape here. This is as far as it goes on the 48-hour. This is by Saturday at 7 in the morning. Again, you can see northward here, we've got a pretty big snow event shaping up. And then even on the back side of this, because there's sufficient forcing, it's going to bring in that snow. And if we actually look here at the frontal positions, there definitely seems to be this consistency. Here's our cold front here by 7 a.m. That warm front, again, notice it's still kind of moving right along this axis here, but it really trails off once you get further northward. Again, that warm front at this time is not going to surge much more northward because of the position that this cold front and also the area of low pressure is. That warm front's now not going to really surge much more northward, so you're going to get a pool of more significant cold air to filter in, and that's where we could see some pretty decent winter weather. So certainly, if I would have to pick here, again, just to kind of line up our fronts, something like that, If I had to pick a more substantial area where we could see the potential for a more significant winter weather event, I would say definitely anywhere from Iowa in through northern Illinois and northern portions of Michigan and southeastern Wisconsin could see the better focus here for some winter weather. Again, coming across this kind of zone with the low pressure towards the south here, and that's going to draw in a lot of cold air from the north. So, definitely seems to be a rather substantial threat for some snow out across those regions. Now, if we move forward in time here, just a quick recap of the 2020 Atlantic hurricane season. Again, we had a record breaking amount of landfalling tropical systems and record breaking amount of named storms. This is all of this is public information, by the way, but this is all of the landfall points this year from tropical cyclones. And we can see that we just have a lot here. We have, first of all, with Hannah, over here, Beta, Laura, Delta, Zeta, Cristobal, Sally, Isaias, Bertha, Ada, and then Faye out there. So certainly, we have seen almost all areas of land be impacted. Basically, all of the coastlines have seen some impacts, all the way from Texas through Florida, seen impacts from tropical cyclones this year in the 2020 Atlantic hurricane season, and what a year it's been. Now, real quickly, yesterday I did mention that today we would talk a little bit about maybe the climatology going forward. So, real briefly, this is the CFS forecast. This is the run here out to September of next year, and we're looking here at the sea surface temperature anomalies. Just one of the various methods here that we can kind of see what may be happening down the road with the state of not only the equatorial Pacific or the ENSO region, but also the Atlantic Basin. If we kind of move this forward, you can see that ENSO cool to La Nina conditions persist. But notice here by June, we're starting to get maybe some warming across the equatorial Pacific. So that's something to watch. And the tropical or the subtropical Atlantic does look above average with a near average area down there in the main development region in the MDR. Now, again, there's a lot of uncertainties here going forward because this isn't going to be completely like accurate, obviously, but it's one of the various methods that we can kind of look at. And definitely does seem to be maybe some consistency that we switch over to an ENSO neutral condition by the time we get into spring of next year. It's about a 50-50 shot right now. I would certainly give it. So we're going to be watching, we're going to be waiting, but right now, as it kind of stands, we'll kind of just have to see what really happens. All right. That being said, hope you all have a great rest of your afternoon and evening. Of course, I am Michael O'Malley. I'll be back tomorrow taking a look at the Shaping Winter Weather event, shaping up across parts of the Midwest.